Hello, praise the Lord. Welcome to the Kiprops channel. This is Mom, and I'm a Mrs. Kiprop, and I am so blessed today. So, there's a testimony I have, as you've seen on the caption. I'm going to talk about the birth of baby Israel, and it is a testimony. So, last year in July, I had a baby who is now 1 year and almost a month. And I just want to share what happened. So, baby Israel is a baby that has gone through quite a journey. From pregnancy stage, when I was pregnant, it was quite a difficult pregnancy because of the fact that I am diabetic. So kwa sababu niko diabetic, ilikuwa pregnancy iko na a lot of ni kama high risk, kwa sababu most people who are diabetic normally risk losing the pregnancy, especially at the initial stages, because of high blood sugar. So through the pregnancy, it was not easy balancing my sugars. I've had diabetes for like 4 years plus, and actually I had history of it from my second born child, Justin. A little bit of a temporary diabetes called gestational, I had it, and then it goes away after you have the baby. So, and then later my third born, which I also believe I had, though I was not careful about it. There was also an issue on the pregnancy, but it wasn't that bad. It was full term and everything went well. And so now I remember I lost a pregnancy because now of diabetes later, before this one. And so we were very skeptical about getting a child again, because I knew it may not happen, and maybe if I conceive I will just lose the baby. And it was, so I had fear of being pregnant until it happened. So when it happened now last year, I was very, of course I was fearful at first, and I remember saying a prayer, and I prayed and covenanted my child to God. And as I say this, I really want to encourage parents that all your children, you need to covenant them to God. To covenant them is to dedicate your children to God and tell God, these are your children, these are your servants, they will serve you, they will live for you. You know, you make an agreement with God. So I remember dedicating and covenanting this child to God, and I prayed and told God, this is your baby, take care of him. You know the issues I've had medically, but I know this one is yours, Lord. This one is yours, and you are in charge of it, and I surrender it to you. So I remember I had an incident of bleeding again, like the one that I lost. I told you it had happened like 2 years before this one. And so when I had the bleeding, I just knew I had lost the baby. You know, I remember being rushed to the hospital by neighbors, friends who really acted so quick. I thank God for them. And when we arrived in the hospital, I remember they really did not act so swift. You know, the way when you're bleeding and you're pregnant, you expect that it is an emergency at the hospital. They were just relaxed. You know, they were taking their time, and I was crying, and I was bleeding, and I was wondering now what next, you know. So I knew it's bad. And I remember one of my friends that took me to the hospital, my neighbor friends here, we have a fellowship together, Mama Imela. She came to the bed that I was seated, and she said a prayer. She just lay her hands on me, and she was whispering a prayer, like she was speaking, but she was whispering. And she was saying, it's going to be well with this baby, you know. She just whispered a few words of prayer, and then she left. You know, and then we went again and waited upstairs, waiting for the lab. I mean, for the, they have to do a scan now, you know. So, and then they called us in. And then I was asking, I went in with my sister, Mary Claire, and we were asking him, why are you people so slow? Like, you are not even worried, you know, you're not worried that this is an emergency. You know what that person said? He said, you know, actually, this question came later. Let me just explain what happened. So, at this moment, he said, we need to check if the baby is still there. That's what he said. And then he asked me to lay down on the bed so that they can do the scan. So, and my sister was praying. I remember she was interceding right at the corner where she was seated while me, I was laying in bed. And she was interceding and declaring, God, this baby is still there. This baby is there, you know. And then now he went ahead na akapitisha akaangalia, and then he said, wow, I'm surprised. You know, that lab person, mtu alikuwa na scan was really surprised, like the baby is still there. And he said, in fact, the baby is so intact. In fact, ako, everything, the baby is very covered. Actually, the bleeding has just happened on the outside, which is okay. We will give medication and all will be well. And then he said he's surprised. And then he looked at my sister and said, so you people are prayer warriors. You people, he said what has touched me the most is just I've never received patients who pray right inside, the room. Yeah, matibabu, and so we were proud about it and said, no, we are born again and we believe God can do anything, can change anything. I remember he really liked us. He even said, I think he's a pastor, and we had this conversation. And then we asked him, why is it that you people take so long? Like a pregnant mother who is worried that they will lose the pregnancy should be an emergency. Like when they come to the hospital, you should act quick. You know what he said? He said most of the time, we always know the baby is out, as long as you've had that heavy bleeding. So, and then he said, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. If the baby is out, he's out. If he's intact, he's intact. There's a way he explained. And he said so. And he said, I am surprised because he knew that that baby is not there while he was attending to me. So it was like a miracle. And my sister was crying, and we were thanking God. We came out of that room and we were telling these women now, the mamas, I'm telling you, they took me to hospital, my neighbor moms. We have a fellowship together. They're very special to me, and I remember telling them that what the result, and they were so happy, and they were like, oh my God, we were just rejoicing the Lord. We knew it was God. It's not luck, like, oh, it was just by luck, because the bleeding I had and the feeling I had had, it felt exactly what happened those 2 years before that. And it had happened the same, the way I had felt. And so I knew the baby was no more. So I know it was a miracle. And as I came home and as I was praying, I was thanking God, then I remembered the covenant. I reminded God again about that covenant. I remember when I was bleeding, I reminded God. So when I came home, when I was wondering, God, you are a wonder working God. And he reminded me of the covenant we made. So it was so consoling. And then so we continued, and everything was well in the pregnancy. Although I was struggling with sugar issues, diabetes, it was not easy at all. But so I believe due to that, sorry, I paused a little bit. So the pregnancy, like I say again, it was not easy because of sugar issues. And then now at 7 months, my water broke, and I headed up. I ended up in hospital. And I remember this hospital we went was not able to receive the child, because when they checked, actually it was true. The water had broken, and when the water breaks, the baby is not safe. It's supposed to be immediate delivery. And when the water breaks again, a mother normally next thing goes into labor, because I had not gone into labor. And with my history of 3 CSs, because I have 4 children now, and the first three I had gone through CS. The first one operation, second one operation, third one operation. And so this one was supposed to be also a CS. And just to tell you, my children are normally big. I get like big babies because of that issue of diabetes. And so that's one of the reasons why it has to be a CS. And so the water has broken. I am now supposed to deliver, but the hospital we go into here in Ronga, I don't want to mention hospitals, because so they say they are not able to receive the child, because why? They don't have a nursery. At 7 months there is need for nursery. It was 31 weeks. This baby was 31 weeks. And so they started helping us to connect. So they tried connecting us to the hospitals that can receive a baby, that have nurseries, and it was not easy. This was 5 p.m. when this happened. We stayed in that hospital, trying and trying, and calling hospitals, and most of them were saying, no, no, no. Some of them said, we only receive children of 34 weeks, mine is 31. Some of them, the money was, some wanted 1 million deposit, they wanted to have 1 million deposit, 800,000 deposit to be admitted. And so we stayed in that hospital. I thank God for these women. They stuck with me during that period in the hospital. They stayed until 1. I'm telling you, 1 a.m. is when we had a solution to go to Kenyatta. And the ambulance was brought. And I want to let you know that through this time, the water was still flowing, I was in fear, because imagine all those hours and the baby is not yet out, they've not done the operation. And so we went to Kenyatta. I was admitted by 2, and waited for the doctor. They said the doctor will be there by 4, by 4 a.m. They will do the operation. And so they prepared me. They gave me injections and lungs. Yeah, mtoto, when a baby is being born early, there is an injection you're given to just make sure the baby's lungs are okay, because normally a preterm baby, a baby who is born before time, akwangi may develop lungs. And so I get those injections and everything. But now it was taking long. The doctor is not arriving, and I began going into labor. I'm not supposed to go into labor. Normally, when you have had those CSs, and you're supposed to do another CS, there is a risk for rupturing. Like your uterus can rupture from inside if you go into labor, because labor inavurutana. That is why normally inakuanga CS ambayo imekuwa scheduled, because it's supposed to happen before you go into labor. So it normally happens 2 weeks to your due date. And so this one now I'm going into labor. I've gone into labor, and I'm so worried now. What if I rupture? Because I remember my third child, the previous one, it was at that time, it was now 6 years ago. Or say it was 6 years ago. I almost ruptured. It was also an emergency that the doctor was shocked that if this mama had chelewed a few minutes, she would have lost them, because they found inside ilikuwa imetea. So I'm worried I'm going into labor. I'm not supposed to go into labor. The doctor was supposed to have arrived and done that thing. But the doctor didn't arrive, so I waited. By 4 a.m. around going to 6 is when I'm taken to the theater, the preparation, everything. And actually, I remember when I lay down there at that theater room, I said a prayer and told God, please, I had been praying continually. And let me tell you, even when we left that other hospital headed to Kenyatta in an ambulance, I cried. This was my first ever time being in an ambulance. And I told God, Lord, have mercy on me. I reminded God of the work I have done in his vineyard. I said, Lord, if there is any work of ministry that I have done, remember that work and have mercy on me and my baby. Please save our lives, that I will not die, my baby will not die, Lord. Remember the work I have done. You remember the prayer of Hezekiah, and God remembered his kazi ambayo alikuwa amefanyia Mungu. And I told God, if I've ever served you really in my life, genuinely from my heart, remember that on your account, Lord, and just save me. And I said this prayer. And I remember in this ambulance, I was with Mama Imela, the one other mama, the rest walibaki. And she was also, I remember she asked those ambulance, the guy in the ambulance, is it okay to pray in this ambulance? And the guy was like, it's okay. You have to ask. And so she went ahead and also prayed for me. So we are here now, fast forward again at the theater room. I'm laying down. I've been praying for my child. And then here I told God, I pray that even when my child arrives, wakati tu anatolewa hivi, I pray that he will cry. Let my baby cry the cry of victory, God. Because again, my last child, he didn't cry when he was born. And it was an emergency. They were even asking for oxygen because the baby did not cry. They tried hitting the baby. They were hitting the baby. And thank God, because it's a different testimony. If I tell you about the testimony of Austin was also supposed to, the enemy wanted him dead. And I remember God used an angel at the hospital. This is not the testimony of Austin. Let me just mention. There was an angel at the hospital who came and told me, don't do full anesthesia. Unapewa dawa za kulala ndio ufanyiwe CS. So this one insisted, and it was somebody I don't know, a nurse I don't know, I had never seen, and I never saw them again. So I knew it was an angel. Aka insist, please fanya hii ya nusu, half anesthesia. I said, no, I'm not doing half because my second child almost died. It is better I sleep, you do this thing. And then Aka insist without an explanation. And yet he said it is liberal. You choose, you don't have to. So I was asking him, why are you forcing? Why do you sound like you're forcing me? And yet again, you're saying that I can choose. Let me choose what I want. And he said, I'm just begging you. Just do the half anesthesia. So when Austin now was born and he could not cry, I understood because I waged war in the labor room, in that theater room. I started praying and interceding while I saw my child at the tap being hit and he cannot cry. And they were calling for oxygen because he was now stopping to breathe. And I remember I waged war. Warfare. And I'm laying down. They are operating on me now. They are closing up the wound, the CS wound. But I am praying. and declaring the blood of Jesus and speaking life over my baby. He will not die, I declare he will not die. He will live to declare the works of the, quoting all those Bible verses and declaring the blood of Jesus. And then they stopped. They say no more need for, the baby actually cried. So the baby cried, and then they say no more need for oxygen. And I knew, wow, now this was the reason why God had sent that angel to make sure I am awake at the theater room. You can imagine if they had dungat me nilale, and this thing happens. Because let me tell you, mamas, when you get in children, these are servants of God, these are children with great destinies, and the enemy knows. And so he follows them during pregnancy and even at birth. So you can imagine in that delivery room, no doctor will pray for the baby. They'll just say, oh, he's not breathing, oh, he cannot cry. No doctor will stop and say, let us call heaven. And so if your child has been followed up to the theater room, imagine if you are sleeping. You'll just wake up and they tell you we are sorry. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, God forbid. But most of the time they tell you that. But if you're, so God wanted me to be awake so that I can intercede at that moment. That's what I believed. Anyway, fast forward again. So I prayed and told God, please, God, I want my child to arrive and to cry. To cry so loud, the cry of victory. And so the operation happened, the baby came out and they held the baby and the baby cried. The baby cried. You know, the baby cried and I just cried because of God's faithfulness. When you've prayed, God asked him for something and then he gives you, you're just at wars. When you see us crying, by the way, sometimes when you're worshiping God, it is because we are worshiping a wonderful God, a God of wonders, like this God, a faithful God who does beyond what humans can do. And so I thanked God, and they said the baby's okay. They showed me the baby, they gave me, I held him here, and I also spoke a word of blessing. And then they took the baby away. The pediatrician was taking care of the baby. The CS wound was being closed, and everything went well. I was taken to the ward, and I was thanking God. The baby was taken to the nursery because I cannot see the baby again unless now to the nursery. So I stayed at the ward, and then I have to walk slowly to the nursery to just check on the baby, come back again like that. That was the routine anyway. So the day went well. Of course, my sisters visited my family in Nairobi. But let me tell you now the twist. I remember the baby started having issues of breathing and convulsions, and the doctor told me and said there is an issue. I was like, what are these again? So the baby had issues of convulsions. I remember that night into the morning of the next day at 4 a.m. a nurse wakes me up and tells me unaitwa na daktari. He just came to she did not even wake me up slow. Ile ni kama it's an emergency. Hey, Margaret, can you wake up? The doctor wants to see you. When I looked at because I thought maybe I've overslept and I've surpassed the time I'm supposed to go check on the baby, because you normally go just checking on the baby in nursery even through the night at intervals, after every, I think, 2 hours. So this was 4 a.m. It was not even I was like 4 a.m. and I'm being woken up like that. Something is not right. And I was interceding as I walked across that corridor. It was a long corridor, and remember, I have a wound. So I'm walking slowly and now praying and telling God, oh, whatever it is, Lord, have mercy. When I go to the nursery, so the doctor talks to me and tells me, Margaret. So my baby was placed of course, at the nursery, but now he was on a table. And let me tell you, I found my baby is having tubes everywhere. I cannot see his face. He got bandages and pipes and things, all over. And then the doctor tells me, hey, Margaret, so an incident just happened, your baby had issues breathing, but the nurses did not notice. So because they didn't notice, the baby went off and even turned blue. By the time the doctor is coming, they are coming to resuscitate the baby. To resuscitate, when you Google that word, this is somebody who stopped breathing temporarily. Kama alikufa for some minutes. And so they resuscitated the baby. And now she's telling me, so we resuscitated the baby. Now he's stable, but he's on a ventilator, on a breathing machine. Hey, I'm listening to this and my heart is interceding. I have learned to just stay put in God when in moments like this. I know many people normally cry and break. So I asked the doctor, oh, okay, I want to be very calm because I don't want to break down. And I asked the doctor, so, but is it a normal thing, like maybe other children normally have such incidences? She said, no, Margaret, actually you need to know that your child is very ill. I don't want to lie to you. He's just very ill. So in short, the doctor was telling me to expect anything because the way they looked, it was like ambieni tu mama venye kuko that nikubaya, so that she's prepared. I left that nursery room. Hiyo corridor ilikuwa mrefu. You know, walking down that corridor, I was praying and my heart was crying and I could not wait to get into that, my room, my word. I wanted to get into the word to call God and tell him, come here, come here, come here, God. So I went into my room, closed my room. I sat on the bed and I prayed. I think I've never prayed such a prayer that, it's like you're just bringing God right in front of you. And I told God, come, 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 come. God, come, my child cannot die. You can imagine the prayers I prayed. And I remember after that prayer, God, there's a word that God gave me. He said, I am doing a new thing. And I was consoled. After that prayer, I was consoled. But I remember calling my sister and telling my sister, you need to come. Because I was so fearful. It's like any minute you're being given some bad news. So I was telling my sister, imekuwa asubuhi toka tu ukuje, because she used to come every day. My sister Mary Claire, God bless you for standing with me in that period. And so my prayers used to be, Lord, I reject any bad report. There will be no bad report concerning baby Israel. And I have to mention, I had an army of prayer warriors. Of the women we serve got together in Goshen ministry right now. Those women stood. They stood. Huyu mtoto sahi, I can say si wangu. Kuna watu waliwejua concerning baby Israel. Until today they still do. Those women were interceding and they would check on me and do prayer items and declare. And also these women, my neighbors, they were praying for the baby. My church, I remember even there was a kesha that Friday wakati nilienda kupata mtoto that night. When I was in pain in hospital, the church had a kesha and the kesha changed and they began praying, just interceding for the baby. So I had people standing in prayer. And that is one very important aspect of your spiritual life. As a Christian or whoever you're just watching this video, you need people to be praying for you. I don't know how. You can imagine if there is no one mentioning your name in prayer. Well, I know those who have parents who pray, you thank God. But imagine if there is nobody mentioning your name in prayer anywhere. There are moments you need people to stand in the gap. Because let me tell you, these things is the enemy that has come. The enemy has come. He prowls around like the roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. He has come to steal, to kill, and to destroy. So you can imagine if you're vulnerable and then there is no one also covering you in prayer, it can be really bad. So they were praying that time, and so we began praying for this baby. So there was issues of breathing. There was issues of convulsions. They are checking the heart is okay. They are checking the baby's, lungs. The lungs are okay. So they are wondering why the issues of breathing. The baby is put in a breathing machine. Breathing machine means the baby is not breathing. It's the machine helping him to breathe. And we kept praying and we declared that baby should come out of the machine. Those were the prayers. And actually, finally, the baby came out of the machine. And the doctor one evening, because every time the doctor would come, I will tell God, I need a good report. I refuse any bad report. And there is a time a doctor would come and I will tell that he's carrying bad news. Sometimes those people can be used by the enemy. But I remember I said, when the doctor comes, I want to hear a good report. And she came, and I could see in her face, she said, the baby is out of the machine, the ventilator. But now I need you to give me consent. I said, what? She said, it's not good to go back to the machine. So if he gets again difficulty in breathing because it seems it's a continuous thing, is it okay to put him back to the machine? Is it okay with you? I asked her, what are you asking? Why are you asking me? Are you saying if he gets the issue of breathing, he should not go back to the machine?